Hello, my name is Christine Ray. Today I will be informing you about a well-known artist of the Italian Renaissance. Most people know him as Michelangelo. He was a painter, architect, poet, and sculptor. Popular works include David and Pieta, which are statues. He is also famous for the Sistine Chapel frescoes, which are ceiling paintings. Last Judgment is an important one. Michelangelo was born in Caprice, Italy on March 6, 1475. His family was middle class and worked with banks. He was actually an apprentice for a painter before actually becoming an artist himself. He was always more interested in watching the painters than doing schoolwork. Michelangelo was eventually introduced to Domenico Ghirlandaio. It was his father's idea for him to apprentice. He was able to learn the fresco technique by doing this. Michelangelo got the privilege to move into the palace of Florentine ruler Lorenzo the Magnificent. He studied classical sculpture here. Living here also allowed him to see the social elite, exposing him to others. At 16, Michelangelo began studying cadavers. This helped him learn anatomy. The exposure would later hurt his health, but it also helped him find distinctive style. Battle of the Centaurs and Madonna Seated on a Step are two surviving relief sculptures. Michelangelo's Cupid sculpture has a couple stories. It was aged artificially to make it look like an antique. Some people think he wanted to achieve a special patina. Others think the dealer buried the sculpture. Cardinal Rariar was fooled but let Michelangelo keep the money. By 1498, he was in Rome in 25. Michelangelo created Pieta. It was a marble sculpture which had Mary holding dead Jesus. It was put in the tomb of Jean Belharis de Logorlis. It was 6 feet wide and just as tall. Pieta is a beautiful sculpture carved from Carrara marble. Piet means pity or compassion. Michelangelo may have heard people trying to credit his work to someone else, so this was his only work with his name on it. Once he was back in Florence and well known, he continued the statue of David, which two others had begun but never finished. He was able to make the finished statue 17 feet tall. It is a prized piece in Florence, Italy. Before he actually started the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, he was working on a project for Pope Julius II's tomb. Originally, the chapel was going to have only 12 apostles. He worked alone after firing all his assistants. Can you imagine just lying on your back hours? A person who knew Michelangelo said, as a result of having painted for so long a time, keeping his eyes fixed on the ceiling, he saw little when he looked down. If he had to read a letter or some other small thing, he was obliged to hold it above his head. This project tortured him in many ways, he admitted. After 4 tortured years, more than 400 over life-size figures, I felt as old and weary as Jeremiah. I was only 37, yet friends did not recognize the old man I had become. Michelangelo had drawn 9 scenes from the book of Genesis on the vault of the chapel. Creation of Adam and Eve, the temptations and fall of Adam and Eve, and the flood were a few of the scenes painted. He was able to use his knowledge of anatomy to create them. The paintings in the Sistine Chapel have elements of high Renaissance art and Christian symbology. The vivid vignettes create a kaleidoscope effect. The creation of Adam is the image most people recognize. Michelangelo wanted perfection. In one of his works he said, "I am here in great distress and with great physical strain, and I have no friends of any kind. Nor do I want them, and I do not have enough time to eat as much as I need. My joy and my sorrow are these discomforts." Later in life, after years of sculptures, paintings, and architecture, he began writing. Vittorio Colonna was the main person in his works. Michelangelo and Vittorio were not married but had a great friendship until her death in 1547. Michelangelo died from a fever on February 18, 1564, at age 88. Before his death, he said, he left his soul to God, his body to the earth, and his material possessions to his nearest relations. He is buried where he requested. Later in life, after years of sculptures, paintings, and architecture, he began writing. Vittorio Colonna was the main person in his works. Michelangelo and Vittorio were not married but had a great friendship until her death in 1547. Michelangelo died from a fever on February 18, 1564. Before his death, he said, he left his soul to God, his body to the earth, and his material possessions to his nearest relations. He is buried where he requested at Basilica di Santa Croce.